The piercing sound of failing engines shattered the peaceful mountain silence. Lyra's crystalline fingers flew across the neural interface of her ship's control panel, but nothing responded. The sleek vessel, designed for deep space exploration, was never meant to enter a planet's atmosphere at this angle. "Computer, emergency landing protocols," she commanded, her translucent skin pulsing with stress patterns of deep purple and electric blue. The ship's AI remained stubbornly silent. The atmospheric entry had fried its core processors. Through the view screen, she watched the Colorado Rockies rush up to meet her, their snow-capped peaks bathed in early morning sunlight. Her species, the Lumini, prided themselves on their logical approach to crisis situations. But as her ship spiraled toward the evergreen forest below, Lyra felt something unfamiliar: fear. The impact came faster than her enhanced reflexes could process. Metal screamed against wood and stone, and everything went dark. Marcus Rivera hadn't expected anything extraordinary during his morning patrol of the National Forest. At 32, he'd spent the last decade as a ranger in these mountains, and most days involved nothing more exciting than warning tourists about proper food storage or documenting wildlife patterns. The meteor, or what he'd initially thought was a meteor, changed everything. He'd tracked the crash site easily enough, following the trail of broken trees and disturbed earth. What he found in the small crater stopped him in his tracks: a vessel unlike anything he'd seen before, its silver surface seeming to shift and flow like liquid metal despite the obvious damage. "Hello?" he called out, one hand instinctively moving to the tranquilizer gun at his hip, standard equipment for dealing with aggressive wildlife. "Anyone in there?" A section of the hull rippled and parted, revealing a figure that made Marcus question his sanity. She, and despite her alien appearance, something about her seemed definitively feminine, stood nearly 7 feet tall. Her skin was transparent, showing traces of what looked like bioluminescent circulatory and nervous systems beneath. Instead of hair, delicate crystal-like structures emerged from her scalp, catching the sunlight and splitting it into rainbow patterns on the disturbed ground. The alien took one step forward and collapsed. Marcus's training kicked in before his fear could take hold. Whatever she was injured and needed help. He rushed forward, noting with surprise that despite her height, she was remarkably light as he caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin was cool to the touch and had an almost glass-like texture, though it remained perfectly flexible. As he carefully lowered her to a sitting position, her eyes fluttered open, all 3 of them. The iridescent orbs focused on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. You're human," she said in perfect English, though her voice had an odd harmonic quality, as if multiple tones were speaking at once. "Last time I checked," Marcus replied, surprising himself with his calm. "I'm Marcus Rivera, Forest Ranger. Are you all right?" The alien skin rippled with patterns of green and gold. "I am Lyra, xenobiological researcher of the Lumini Collective. My ship's systems failed during an observation mission." She attempted to stand but swayed unsteadily. "My stabilization implants appear to be malfunctioning." Marcus gently supported her weight. "I have a cabin about 2 miles from here. Not exactly alien-grade medical facilities, but it's better than staying out in the open." Lyra's third eye, centered slightly above and between the other 2, blinked independently as she studied him. "Your offer of assistance is unexpected. Our research suggested humans would respond to first contact with fear or hostility." "Well," Marcus said with a slight smile, "maybe your research needs updating. Can you walk?" "I believe so, though not quickly." Her skin shifted to a lighter shade, almost pink. "I must admit, I find your calm acceptance of my appearance quite fascinating. Most species require significant preparation before direct contact with the Lumini." As they began their slow journey through the forest, Marcus found himself stealing glances at his extraordinary companion. "I've worked in these mountains long enough to know that the universe is full of wonders. You're definitely the most impressive I've seen, but you're not the strangest thing I've encountered up here. Lyra's crystalline structures chimed softly as she turned to look at him. You intrigue me, Marcus Rivera. Perhaps this accidental first contact will prove more valuable than our planned observation mission. They walked in silence for a while, the morning sun climbing higher in the sky. Marcus noticed how Lyra seemed to unconsciously reach out to touch the trees they passed, her transparent fingers leaving trails of soft light where they contacted the bark. Your planet's biodiversity is remarkable, she said finally. We have nothing like these forests on my homeworld. Our cities are grown from living crystal, but they lack this unpredictable vitality. The forest has its own wisdom, Marcus replied. Sometimes the most beautiful things are the ones we can't control or fully understand. Lyra's skin pulsed with patterns of deep blue. That statement contradicts every principle of Lamini philosophy. And yet. She paused, her three eyes taking in the sunlight filtering through the canopy above. I find myself unable to disagree. As they approached his cabin, Marcus realized that his life had irrevocably changed. Whatever happened next, the universe had just become a much larger and more wonderful place than he'd imagined. Marcus's cabin, though modest by human standards, fascinated Lyra. She moved through the space with careful precision, her crystalline features reflecting the afternoon light that streamed through the windows. Every object seemed to demand her attention, from the worn leather boots by the door to the stack of books on quantum physics sharing shelf space with well-loved hiking guides. Your dwelling contains an intriguing mix of practical tools and intellectual pursuits, she observed, her third eye focusing on a chess set carved from local wood. The Lamini separate such aspects of life entirely. Marcus busied himself with making tea, an earth custom he thought might help normalize the surreal situation. How so? Our cities are divided into distinct purpose chambers. Learning occurs in knowledge centers, rest in sleep pods, sustenance in nutrition facilities. Her skin rippled with patterns of curiosity, soft amber waves that caught the sunlight. We find it more efficient. Sounds lonely, Marcus said, offering her a steaming mug. Her transparent fingers wrapped around it carefully, and he watched in amazement as the heat from the drink created swirling patterns in her circulatory system. Lonely, she repeated, testing the word. A human emotional concept indicating negative feelings about solitude? When Marcus nodded, she continued, the Lamini do not experience loneliness. We are connected through our crystalline network, sharing thoughts and discoveries instantly across light years. Marcus settled into his favorite chair, gesturing for her to take the one opposite. But you're cut off from that network now, aren't you? The patterns beneath her skin darkened momentarily. Yes. The crash damaged my neural interface. It is disorienting to be truly alone with my thoughts for the first time in my existence. Maybe that's not entirely bad, Marcus suggested. Sometimes being alone helps us understand ourselves better. Lyra's head tilted slightly, her crystal structures catching the light. You speak of self-discovery as if it were valuable. The Lamini believe the collective advancement of knowledge is the only worthy pursuit. And yet here you are, studying other species, seeking new understanding. Marcus smiled. Sounds like curiosity to me. That's not so different from human scientists. Perhaps, Lyra acknowledged, her skin pulsing with thoughtful blues and greens. Though our methods differ significantly. I have studied your species' scientific history. You rely heavily on intuition and emotional inspiration, concepts the Lamini consider primitive. Marcus leaned forward, genuinely interested. But emotion and intuition have led to some of our greatest discoveries. Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. Albert Einstein, your physicist who revolutionized human understanding of spacetime. Lyra's three eyes blinked in sequence. We have studied his work. His mathematical models were surprisingly accurate for their time. For their time? Marcus raised an eyebrow. I take it the Lumini have moved beyond relativity? We have unified quantum mechanics with gravity, she confirmed. Though perhaps I should not share such information. Our observation protocols are quite strict about technological contamination of developing species. Marcus couldn't help but laugh. Developing species? We might surprise you. Humans have a way of making unexpected leaps forward. Lyra's skin shifted to a new color he hadn't seen before, a deep, intense purple that seemed to hold depths within depths. You already have, Marcus Rivera. Your response to my presence here contradicts centuries of Lumini behavioral models regarding first contact scenarios. They spent the next few hours in a fascinating exchange. Lyra explained the basics of Lumini society, their crystal cities that grew and evolved with their needs, their dedication to pure logic and the advancement of scientific knowledge. In return, Marcus shared stories of human culture, art, and the complex relationship between humans and the natural world. As the sun began to set, Lyra stood by the window, watching the changing colors paint the mountains. I must repair my ship, she said finally. The longer I remain, the greater the risk of detection by your authorities. I'll help, Marcus offered immediately. I'm pretty good with mechanical repairs, though I admit your technology might be a bit beyond my experience. The physical repairs are relatively simple. The neural interface is more problematic. She turned to face him, her crystalline features catching the last rays of sunlight. I will require materials that do not exist on Earth. Then we'll figure something out, Marcus said with a conviction that made Lyra's skin pulse with that strange purple hue again. There's always a solution if you're willing to think creatively. Creative thinking, she mused. Another human trait we have perhaps undervalued. She moved closer to him, her height making her tower over his seated form. You should understand, Marcus Rivera, that prolonged exposure to me may have unforeseen consequences. The Lumini presence can affect other species in unexpected ways. Marcus stood, meeting her tripled gaze steadily. I'm willing to take that risk. Besides, you've already changed how I see the universe, might as well see where this leads. As night fell over the mountains, Lyra experienced another first, the sight of Earth stars from the surface. They were different from the view she knew from space, somehow more mysterious and enchanting when seen through the filter of atmosphere. Beautiful, isn't it? Marcus said softly, joining her on the cabin's small porch. Yes, Lyra replied, her voice harmonics shifting to a lower register. Though I find myself uncertain if I am appreciating the aesthetic quality of the stellar display or experiencing an emotional response to it. Maybe it's both, Marcus suggested. Maybe that's what we humans get right sometimes, understanding that logic and feeling don't have to be separate. In the darkness, Lyra's bioluminescent systems created patterns that seemed to mirror the starlight above. For the first time in her existence, she wondered if her species' dedication to pure logic had led them to miss something fundamental about the nature of consciousness itself. Dawn found Lyra and Marcus at the crash site, where pieces of the ship's liquid metal hull had begun to self-repair. Lyra's fingers danced across the neural interface, her skin flickering with frustration patterns as she assessed the damage. The quantum core is intact, she announced, but the crystalline matrix that allows me to communicate with it is severely fractured. Without a direct connection to my ship's systems, I cannot initiate full repairs. Marcus studied the otherworldly technology with fascination. What about alternative methods? Something mechanical rather than neural? Impossible. The ship's systems are biologically linked to Lumini physiology. She paused, her third eye focusing on him intently. Though, your suggestion prompts an interesting theoretical question. The human brain produces electrical signals not entirely dissimilar to our crystalline networks. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? A hybrid interface. Highly experimental and probably dangerous. Her skin rippled with analytical patterns. The Lumini Council would consider it a severe violation of protocol. Marcus grinned. Good thing they're not here then. Over the next several days, they worked together to create something entirely new, a bridge between human and Lumini technology. Marcus's practical knowledge of Earth's electronics combined with Lyra's advanced understanding of quantum systems produced results that surprised them both. But it wasn't just the technology that was evolving. Lyra found herself experiencing unprecedented sensations. When Marcus's hand accidentally brushed hers while working on a circuit, her bioluminescence flared with colors she'd never displayed before. She caught herself watching him when he wasn't looking, fascinated by the way his expressions changed with his emotions. "Your species considers touch important," she said one evening as they rested from their work. "I've observed how humans maintain physical contact during social interactions." Marcus looked up from the circuit board he was modifying. "Touch helps us connect, feel less alone. It's part of being human. The Lumini avoid physical contact except during necessary medical procedures or reproduction." She hesitated, then extended her transparent hand. "Would you show me?" Marcus set aside his work and gently took her hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, like living glass, but it warmed at his touch. Beneath the surface, patterns of light danced and swirled. "Your circulatory system is responding," he noted, watching the display. "Yes." Her voice harmonics shifted to a lower frequency. "The sensation is overwhelming. I understand now why my species might have chosen to eliminate such interactions. They make it difficult to maintain logical thought patterns." "Is that such a bad thing?" Marcus's thumb traced patterns on her palm, creating new swirls of light. "Maybe some things aren't meant to be understood through logic alone." Lyra's third eye closed, a sign of deep concentration among her people. "I am experiencing computational difficulties. My training included extensive preparation for cultural contamination, but I find myself wanting to be contaminated." "That's a very clinical way of saying you have feelings," Marcus said softly. "Feelings." She tested the word carefully. "The Lumini eliminated emotional responses generations ago. We considered them evolutionary holdovers that impeded scientific progress." Her skin pulsed with that now familiar purple hue. "But perhaps we were wrong. These sensations, they create new neural pathways, new ways of understanding." Marcus released her hand slowly. "You're changing." "Yes." For the first time, uncertainty patterns appeared in her bioluminescence. "The Council would consider me damaged, in need of psychological reconstruction. But I am beginning to question whether their perspective is as complete as we believed." She stood and walked to the cabin's window, watching snow begin to fall. "My people believe we achieved perfection when we eliminated emotional responses. We saw ourselves as the pinnacle of evolution, beings of pure logic and reason." She turned back to Marcus, all three eyes gleaming. "But watching you, learning from you, I wonder if we instead became stagnant." "How so?" "Humans are chaotic, emotional, often irrational, everything the Lumini reject. Yet you create art that moves souls, music that defies mathematical explanation, poetry that captures truths our most advanced algorithms cannot quantify." Her skin rippled with new patterns, complex and beautiful. "You love, you hurt, you dream, and in doing so, you grow in ways my people have forgotten." Marcus stood and joined her at the window. "Sounds like someone's developing some emotions of their own." "Perhaps. And that terrifies me in ways I cannot quantify." She lifted her hand, watching snowflakes fall through her transparent flesh. "I am changing, Marcus. Every moment I spend with you alters my neural patterns. Soon, I may be something neither human nor Lumini. Maybe you'll be something better than both," he suggested. "Something new." Her skin pulsed with that deep purple that now appeared whenever they were close. The repair work on the ship will be complete soon. I should feel relief at the prospect of returning to my people. But you don't? No. She turned to face him fully. I feel. And that changes everything. The repair signal pulsed through space exactly 3 Earth weeks after Lyra's crash. She felt it first, a familiar resonance in her crystalline structures that made her skin flash with warning patterns. They're coming, she announced, looking up from the quantum circuit she and Marcus had been calibrating. A Lumini recovery vessel has detected my ship's emergency beacon. Marcus set down his tools, his expression carefully neutral. How long? Approximately 6 Earth hours. Her third eye darted between the window and Marcus's face. They will expect me to have maintained isolation protocols. Any sign of contamination by human culture will result in immediate memory purification. The words hung heavy in the cabin's air. They both knew what memory purification meant. Everything that made Lyra who she had become would be erased, replaced with pure Lumini logic. Then we need to make a decision, Marcus said, standing. Because I'm not letting them wipe away who you are. Lyra's skin rippled with conflict patterns, sharp angles of red and blue clashing beneath her transparent surface. The Lumini do not recognize individual rights when collective knowledge is at risk. They will consider my emotional development a danger to our species' evolution. Run away with me, Marcus suggested suddenly. We can take your ship, find somewhere they won't find us. Her crystalline features chimed softly as she shook her head. They would track the quantum signature. And my absence would prompt a full investigation of Earth. Your species isn't ready for that level of contact. Outside, snow was falling again, thick flakes that muted the world into silence. Lyra pressed her hand against the window, leaving trails of light on the glass. I have learned so much here, Marcus. Things that could revolutionize Lumini society, if only they would listen. Make them listen. Marcus moved closer, his presence sending new waves of purple through her luminescent systems. You're proof that logic and emotion can coexist, that they make each other stronger. The Council. The Council is wrong, Marcus interrupted. They're so convinced of their own perfection that they can't see how much they've lost. Show them. Show them what you've learned. Lyra's third eye widened. You're suggesting I actively resist protocol. Become, what is your term? A revolutionary? Why not? You've already broken their biggest taboo by developing emotions. Might as well go all the way. A new pattern appeared in Lyra's skin, a spiral of gold and silver that seemed to pulse with possibility. The consequences would be severe. The Council might quarantine Earth to prevent the spread of emotional contamination. Or they might learn something. Marcus took her hand, watching the now familiar purple light dance beneath her surface. You told me the Lumini value knowledge above all else. Well, you've gained knowledge they don't have. Knowledge about connection, about growth, about what happens when logic and emotion work together instead of fighting each other. Lyra's free hand moved to her chest, where the equivalent of a human heart would be. There, the purple light pulsed strongest. I am experiencing an intense physiological response to the idea of leaving. My systems are, in distress. We call that heartbreak, Marcus said softly. It is, extremely unpleasant. She squeezed his hand. Yet I find myself unwilling to suppress it. These feelings, even the painful ones, have become precious to me. A distant sound made them both look up, a high-pitched hum just at the edge of human hearing. The recovery vessel was entering the atmosphere. I must prepare, Lyra said, her voice harmonics shifting through multiple frequencies. They will expect a full report on my crash and survival procedures. And what will you tell them? She turned to him, all 3 eyes glowing with an intensity he'd never seen before. The truth. That I have made a discovery more important than any in Lumini history. That emotions are not evolutionary weakness but a source of strength we abandoned too quickly. They'll try to stop you. Yes. Her skin rippled with determination, a new pattern of intersecting lines that seemed to glow from within. But they will have to catch me first. Marcus watched in amazement as she interfaced with her ship's systems, her crystalline structures resonating with power. What are you doing? Rewriting the ship's quantum protocols. If I cannot prevent memory purification, I can at least ensure that this experience, these feelings, are encoded in the ship's core memory. She worked with incredible speed, her fingers leaving trails of light across the neural interface. Even if they erase me, the data will remain, waiting for someone else to discover it. The humming grew louder. Somewhere high above, the recovery vessel was scanning for her exact location. Marcus, she said, turning to him one last time. I need you to know. He stepped forward, closing the distance between them. I know. Her skin blazed with purple light so bright it illuminated the entire cabin. In that moment, she made her decision. The Lumini recovery vessel descended like a falling star, its crystalline surface refracting the morning light. 3 tall figures emerged, their transparent forms unmarked by the emotional patterns that now characterized Lyra's skin. Science observer Lyra, the leader addressed her in harmonics that made the air vibrate. You have violated multiple protocols. Prepare for extraction and purification. Lyra stood before her ship, Marcus at her side. Her skin pulsed with calm, determined patterns of blue and gold. Greetings, recovery team. I refuse purification. I request instead an emergency council hearing. The recovery team's crystalline structures chimed in discord. Request denied. Your neural patterns show severe contamination. Memory purification is mandatory. My neural patterns show evolution, not contamination. Lyra's voice carried new harmonics, passion mixed with logic. I have discovered something that challenges our most basic assumptions about consciousness and progress. The leader stepped forward, towering over both Lyra and Marcus. The human's presence confirms the extent of protocol violation. This entire sector may require quarantine. Before you act, Lyra said, her hand finding Marcus's, observe this. Her skin blazed with purple light, and suddenly the quantum field around them shifted. Through their crystalline networks, the recovery team felt what Lyra felt, every emotion, every revelation, every moment of growth she'd experienced. The leader staggered back, crystalline features chiming in shock. This is impossible. No, Lyra corrected. This is what we lost when we chose pure logic over balanced evolution. Look at my neural patterns, emotion hasn't weakened my cognitive functions. It's enhanced them. I've developed quantum theories that our best minds haven't conceived because I learned to think beyond pure mathematics. She released Marcus's hand and stepped forward. The Lumini abandoned emotion because we feared its chaos. But I've learned that chaos and order aren't opponents, they're partners in a dance we forgot how to perform. The recovery team's skin began to show faint traces of color, the first emotional patterns their kind had displayed in generations. The quantum field around them hummed with new possibilities. The council must hear this, the second recovery officer said, their voice harmonics shifting to include undertones of wonder. The implications for our understanding of consciousness are revolutionary, Lyra finished. But I will only share my discoveries on one condition: Earth remains protected, and I stay as ambassador. The leader's third eye focused on Marcus. You propose ongoing contact with humans? I propose a controlled study of emotional reintegration, with Earth as our learning ground. Lyra's skin rippled with confident patterns. The Lumini value knowledge above all. Here is knowledge we never knew we lost. Hours of quantum communication followed as the recovery team consulted with the distant council. Marcus watched the silent exchange, marked only by shifting patterns of light and color through their transparent forms. Finally, the leader turned to Lyra. The Council has reached a decision unprecedented in our history. They authorize a new research initiative, Project Evolution. You will serve as chief researcher, studying the integration of emotional and logical processing. Lyra's skin blazed with joy, a supernova of color had made the recovery team step back in alarm and fascination. And my role as Earth Ambassador? Granted, with conditions. The human Marcus Rivera will be registered as your research partner, given limited access to Lumini technology for documentation purposes. Marcus grinned. Research partner, huh? That's quite a promotion from Forest Ranger. Lyra turned to him, her three eyes soft with emotion their species had forgotten could exist. It means you'll need to learn quantum mechanics. I'm a fast learner, he replied. Especially with the right teacher. The recovery team watched this exchange with growing patterns of curiosity in their own skin, the first stirrings of change in a species that had thought itself beyond evolution. As the mountain snow began to melt with the approaching spring, Lyra and Marcus stood watching the recovery vessel depart. Their work was just beginning, building a bridge between two species, between logic and emotion, between stagnation and growth. Are you ready? Marcus asked, looking up at the stars that were no longer just distant lights but gateways to new understanding. Lyra's skin pulsed with every color they discovered together. Ready to change the universe? With you? Always. Above them, the first stars of evening appeared, witnesses to a new chapter in the evolution of two species. In the quantum fields that connected all things, logic and emotion danced together once more, as they were always meant to do. The end.